Okay. So hi and welcome to the Athlete to Alumni webinar. This series will cover all things related to transitioning from the student athlete role to the alumni role and teach you what you can do to help guide this transition before you even graduate. Each week we'll cover a specific career industry to connect you with alumni who have had successful transitions themselves and allow them to give you advice on what you will need to prepare for. This episode will cover government, and joining me today for this discussion is a former cheer terp, Megan Davey. So, a little background on Megan. So she is currently the branch chief of strategic plans and policy for the Department of Homeland Security's Insider Threat Program. Ms. Davey leads the DHS-wide Insider Threat Strategic implementation and collaboration with 8 operational components while sharing best practices and lessons learned. Ms. Davey previously served as the Security Incident Reporting Program Manager supporting the Insider Threat Program from May 2016 to May 2019. During that time, she facilitated DHS enterprise standardization and compliance in order to effectively mitigate security infraction and violations. This consisted of extensive planning, communication, and coordination amongst various stakeholders across the department. In 2014, Ms. Davey played an integral role as one of the founding members of the DHS Insider Threat Program by helping to develop the program structure and shape initial departmental policies. Additionally, Ms. Davey held the role of an insider threat analyst responsible for the detection and mitigation of insider threats to safeguard classified national security information from exploitation, compromise, or other unauthorized disclosures. Prior to joining the insider threat community, Ms. Davey was a DHS security training instructor, providing training to the DHS enterprise. Before transitioning to the DHS headquarters, Ms. Davey was a special security officer for the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, supporting the Office of Intelligence, Office of Air and Marine, and the U.S. Border Patrol. Ms. Davey entered on duty with DHS in February 2014 as a security assistant for the United States Secret Service.
2004. Oh, 14.
Oh, 4. Yeah, you're right. My bad. Wow. So obviously a very extensive background and, have done a lot. And I'm really excited to hear even more into detail about what you do and your experience, not only at Maryland, but then since you've left. So thank you and welcome. Thank you for being here. Really excited to have this conversation.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. Yes, a lot of big words, a lot of agency names. The typical professional bio can be kind of dull, but I figured that I would go the reverse order for how I got where I am today. If that's okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. I went to University of Maryland 2000 through 2004, and I was on the Spirit Squad, is what it was known as then, the all-girl cheerleading squad. I always was interested in looking into the federal government or government and politics, hence my degree focus. I did government and politics with a focus in criminal justice. Being from the DMV area, I definitely envisioned working in Washington, D.C., thought that was definitely the path I was going down. So my junior year was when I started getting a little more serious about looking at possibilities and jobs out there or internships. And I was very fortunate that the United States Secret Service offered a paid internship of all things. So I applied for that position. And for those who aren't aware, the federal government has different pay scales. I started as a GS4. That's like pretty low. And that's because, I had not received my degree yet. So it's kind of my foot in the door. I started off working just in their HR department. But what was really important about being accepted to that internship at Secret Service was that I was able to go through my background investigation and obtain a top secret clearance. So that really set me up for success moving forward. For my career path and future growth. So I worked there just because the background takes so long, for those of you who aren't aware, they take quite a long time to get your clearance. I applied in 2003, probably July timeframe, and I started February in 2004. So just to finish up my last semester of my senior year is when I began working there. I was fortunate I could do my classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays and work Monday, Wednesday, Friday downtown. So I got to take the metro and, act like I was an adult and everything. So, so I did that through the remainder of my senior year. And what was pretty cool is Tom Ridge, who was then the Secretary of Homeland Security, he spoke at our college graduation, and I could say, hey, that's my boss. Homeland Security was pretty new then. It was developed, in 2002 after 9/11 took place, and 9/11 occurred when I was on campus. So there definitely was some meaning to my direction of going with Homeland Security. I always tell people, find an office, an agency, an organization that you can be passionate about and support their mission and vision. So Homeland Security is very large. So I was working at United States Secret Service. That is just one umbrella piece to that big organization. So DHS headquarters is at the top, and we have Secret Service, U.S. Coast Guard, Customs and Border Protection, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Citizen Immigration Services, FEMA, the disaster relief group, we have TSA, and we now have a cyber agency. So we have 8 operational components that all report to the big DHS headquarters. So I started my journey at Secret Service, like I said, and after graduation, I was fortunate enough to find a position to, again, continue that career path there and not lose my clearance and keep that foot in the door. And I was assigned to the Clearance and Access branch at Secret Service. So this is the group that does specialize in security, making sure people are vetted properly, granting them access to different programs, different clearance levels, foreign travel and contacts and things like that. So I worked there for a few years, and then I decided actually to leave the federal government and go to the contracting world. And I worked for a company called SRA International. They supported defense and Homeland Security type contracts. So I was plucked from Secret Service and then pushed over to the US Border Patrol Intelligence. I worked at the Ronald Reagan Building downtown in DC for the Border Patrol from 2005 through 2008, doing administrative type work, but also doing coordination and communication for the intelligence group. I worked on drug seizure statistics and different metrics, and I also helped to develop a better process and procedure for how Border Patrol employees would upgrade their clearances. They were running into an issue where they would hire individuals, and it wasn't a requirement to have a clearance like at Secret Service where it was. And once they would go to upgrade someone's clearance, it was taking forever. They weren't able to start doing their actual jobs because some locations require you to have a higher clearance level to even walk in the door. So I kind of helped them evolve their process and clean it up so it could run much smoother and people could transition easier. So that was one of my big accomplishments there. So after 3 years of being there, the contract company decided to promote me and move me over to ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to their intelligence office, where I was supposed to be assigned to help organize their sensitive compartmented information facility. It's called a SCIF. So I had to spell it all out for you. Lots of acronyms in the government. While there, I was contacted actually by someone who worked in Customs and Border Protection Intelligence. So that's its own group, saying they really wanted me to come back. And so they created a government position for me. So I wasn't really excited about what I was doing at ICE at the time. So I kind of waited it out until that position became open, because there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape in the government. You have to apply, make a list, interview, compete. So not just being handed a job. So I was able to get into that position and go back to the Ronald Reagan Building across town, where I worked in a classified space and helped coordinate high-level briefings and kind of supported all of the staff who needed to travel and gain access to classified information. So I enjoyed doing that, and I enjoyed doing it so much that when the opportunity came up for I'll say CBP, that's Customs and Border Protection, they opened up a classified space in California, and they needed somebody to get it up and running. So I sold everything I owned and drove across country and did that for them for 3 years. So I was in Riverside, California, actually at March Air Force Base. We were able to have a joint location on that Air Force Base. And I supported the U.S. Customs Air and Marine Operations Center. And that is where we track all non-commercial aircrafts throughout the country, and also worked on reviewing Predator video that had been done on the border, but we would view it up at that level. And half of the building was classified. It was either secret or top secret level or higher. So I helped manage security in general, in addition to just that one classified space while I was there. And it was definitely a learning experience because that was technically the field and not headquarters level that I had been at for so long. So really eye-opening, and seeing more boots on the ground, as they say, more of the operators doing their work and supporting them. And it was very rewarding because I got to educate a lot of people there. I helped develop new training programs for security. So there were a lot of people who weren't aware what it really meant to have a clearance and how to work in that environment properly. So I was able to kind of upgrade their awareness and improve the general security posture of the whole building. And in around 2012, I wanted to come back to DC, seek out more opportunities and promote. And I actually applied at DHS headquarters, so Department of Homeland Security headquarters, to be a security training specialist. So they have a whole security training team that develops curriculum and provides training to the whole Department of Homeland Security enterprise. So I was teaching how to mark documents properly that were classified, how to, we have like safes that we keep material in, kind of getting dirty and rolling up our sleeves and teaching people how to make sure their safes are functioning properly. I would do orientation for new hires, whether it was somebody who was a 20-year veteran coming from DoD or an intern coming from University of Maryland. So I would be that first face they would see, brief them into their clearance and make sure they understand how to protect national security information. After a few years of doing that, that is when I was given the opportunity to do a temporary assignment to help a higher up who had just been put in our office as an advisor to develop the insider threat program. The president had signed an executive order mandating that all federal agencies develop this insider threat program. This was due to Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden, so having those types of spies at work. So this was a way to protect our classified networks, as well as the information we would hold in the networks and in those spaces. So I worked to develop our initial policy of how we were going to actually get this program up and running, how we were going to implement it across the whole DHS enterprise, and even develop some of the staffing plans. And I was fortunate enough that one of the positions I had an interest in, so I was able to apply, compete, interview, and be selected for it. So again, wasn't handed to me. I had to kind of earn that spot. So I was kind of, as you said during the bio, one of the founding members of it, because I was the first person they hired officially for the insider threat program. It started off very small, small shop that has grown much larger since. We have people who are specializing in operations, investigations, technical capabilities, as well as programmatic. Prior to advancing to where I am now, I left the role of being an analyst to work on more policy type things. And that's when I became the security incident program manager. And this was a tough task. I had to work with all the different components to standardize how we were addressing people mishandling classified. So we had to categorize what they did, what level, what was the outcome. It's about risk management and really trying to make sure we're all on the same page and following the same procedures and protocol. I developed a committee off of this task, to where we would kind of do, share those lessons learned and best practices and come to a good place of, we all agree upon this, and this, so let's move forward. I briefed higher level officials, such as the Undersecretary for Management, who's number 3 for DHS on this program, since it was such a huge success. And because of the success that I had in that position, I was introduced to a role still in the insider threat program, but it was a brand new position. So I kind of had to figure it out as I got put in it, where I am a management program analyst, fancy word for overseeing and assisting a program, for all the strategic plans and policies regarding insider threat. So this has to do with training. This has to do with our standard operating procedures, our official guidance that the components, again, have to follow and implement at their level. I also lead efforts in communications for the whole division. We are a division at headquarters, but we are the program for the whole department. And I make sure that everybody's just on the same page and communicating, and that we're sharing information so we can prevent an insider threat from occurring at any of our agencies. And we call it an insider threat hub. We have different contractors in our space. We have different components. We have different positions. And the idea is all these subject matter experts bring something to the table as far as knowledge and history. We have people who used to work at the CIA, FBI, who profile people. We have a clinical psychologist on staff who helps us develop indicators and note behavioral patterns of possible insider threats. One thing that we take pride in at DHS is that the original mandate was to protect the classified information, while our chief security officer, who is the senior insider threat official for the whole department, decided we were going to actually expand our mission scope. So we have different categories beyond classified that we work on. So we make sure we are detecting, deterring, mitigating workplace violence, espionage, sabotage, terrorism, to include domestic violent extremism. Let's see. I can't remember the next one. I'm already messed it up. Espionage, I said. Transnational criminal organization, investigative support. I think I got it. I use the term wetsuit as a good way to remember. Yeah, workplace violence, espionage, the terrorism, sabotage, unauthorized disclosures was the other one. There you go. I got all seven. Woo! I could have failed a test, you know. So we are literally the eyes, ears of the department trying to protect our own workforce. So the mission remains constant. I mean, you know, especially with the insurrection at the Capitol and other events happening in the country, we have to make sure that our own people are not going to be a risk to us and expose their other employees and personnel at the department. So make sure we're protecting our information and we're protecting our people, protecting our systems and networks, because we want to make sure that none of that information is compromised and it doesn't get into the wrong hands. It's definitely a lot to take on because it is that enterprise type approach and coordination with all different types of people above me, people below me, people with much more experience than me. And we're making a huge success. We're even developing a enterprise governance framework, which is going to help with legitimacy of the program. It's going to help bring all those high-level personnel and stakeholders to the table to help us with budget, you know, getting funding for the things we need and equipment, you know, systems, getting the personnel that we need on staff to really accomplish the mission of protecting our people so we can protect the homeland. And I believe I'll stay in this position for a while. I really enjoy it. Yeah, there I am. Whew, that was a lot.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think that was a great introduction too, because you know, obviously you've done a lot in your career, so it's nice to be able to go back and kind of look at each piece and see how you've built your career. So thank you. You know, with that, obviously you've had a ton of post-grad accomplishments and you've done a lot in your career and obviously taking those steps higher and higher up. But what's one of the challenges that you faced after leaving Maryland and how did you overcome it?
Let's see. Well, leaving Maryland, you know, you're in your routine, you're used to things at a certain way, and then you go out in the big world, you know, and it's kind of getting out there on your own. I was fortunate, you know, as being a cheerleader that I had that, the good support system with those friendships I developed. And some of us had similar interests in line of work as well. So we were able to support each other with that, but definitely learning how things really work, that it's not about just going to classes and doing the work. Like, you really have to make things happen for you. I'm the type of person that if you tell me I can't do it, then I'm going to do it. So really putting in that effort, going the extra distance to get things done. And it is also about like who you know and that networking and the people that you come across. I've made so many meaningful relationships, and I have a lot of people that I could call upon for favors, or, if I meet someone that is looking for a job or anything like that. And a lot of, possibilities are out there.
Awesome, thank you. So I know that you touched on how you had the opportunity to go to California for a couple years. So can you talk a little bit more about what that like social transition was like? So obviously now you're removed from athletics and you're into your career. So making that big of a jump and not having that sort of support system around you, how did you handle that transition?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. Like I said, I got my car and drove cross country. I didn't really know anyone out there. I knew one person at the site I was going to work at. I was very fortunate that she let me rent a room from her when I first got there, but I wasn't making much money. I kind of had to get my bearings and see where I wanted to live and figure out, the lay of the land. California was definitely different than living in a city area. It's super spaced out. It's large. I ended up settling in a town called Temecula, and it's not really a place of like industry or, there's no tall office buildings or anything. There's a lot of more small businesses there, maybe teaching stores, restaurants, things like that. Luckily, Camp Pendleton was nearby, so there was some military out there. And then San Diego was about 45 minutes south. So I did have places like that I could go, but it was definitely getting used to a different life culture. I was laying by the pool almost every day when I wasn't working, and it's so weird, it's always warm there. But I definitely didn't have the same support system out there as when I did here. I couldn't count on many people for help. So I did gain more of a sense of independence while I was out there. Yeah.
No, I think that's really helpful. I think that a lot of students almost forget that piece when you come into, honestly, even just a university setting, but then specifically adding, being on a sports team, your friends are kind of built into that. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of times that's like a big adjustment. So it's good to hear that. But I like how you phrase it as like getting your independence, because I think that that's important and that's something you can do anywhere for sure.
I did want to add too, because I just thought of this. When I was out there, I was in that rut of fitness and like gym life. What do I do? Because I was so used to how I stayed fit prior. I actually was on a jog one day and ran past a CrossFit gym, and I saw what they were doing, and I was like, oh, that's completely up my alley. It's basically gymnastics type movements and weightlifting. And I was a former competitive power lifter, so that combined with cheerleading was great. So I did build a sense of camaraderie and join that gym. And that was definitely helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. Even in some of the older episodes, people talked about joining different, even a kickball league or something like that. So that seems to be a good way to kind of make those connections, and you're with like-minded people because you're an athlete yourself. So getting to work and be around other athletes, I think is pretty helpful in making friendships. You sort of read my mind with that, because my next question was going to do with the whole time management piece. So I know that a lot of students come out, they get, like you said, into a rut with fitness or just managing their own schedule. So obviously you set yourself up pretty well before you even graduated, but what was it like to own your own schedule after college, and kind of what would you, recommend for students to do, and what worked for you and what didn't?
So yeah, with with cheerleading, I felt like we didn't have any time between practices and then cheering football and then women's basketball, men's basketball. So it was kind of, it was definitely a shock to the system, to all of a sudden be like, oh, I have all this time. Yes, you get a job, you have those 8 to 10 hours you give that job, but I've always managed to be a part of something else in addition to that, whether it's, I judged cheerleading competitions for a little bit on the side. And now I teach fitness classes on the side. Now I teach CrossFit as well as F45, high intensity interval training, and I still make time for myself. So it's everyone, has a different way of them. Like some people were better at just reading the book and taking the test. I was that girl who needed to go to class and read the book, and like I need all the things. Whereas my roommate and best friend, she could just read the book and get an A on the test. I couldn't do that. So everybody's a little different on what they need as far as helping them with time management or what makes something a priority for them. I thrive off of being successful, and I off of a challenge. I enjoy that. I tell people like I get a high when I like have a project and I complete it and it's successful. But some people it is money. Some people it is traveling. Like everybody kind of has their own different reward system. But I always tell people I get rewarded when I do a good job at work by being rewarded with another good job to do. Like I'm always handed, oh, well, you did that well, here's the next thing. But yeah, you definitely have to make time and prioritize what works for you. Like, do you want to only be about work? Do you want a family? I'm single. I don't have children. I'm not married. I would like to have a family, but that just hasn't worked for me yet. But it's making sure, that balance, that work-life balance, and don't lose yourself. Try to have a hobby, try to, have something that you focus on that's just for you.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you. So we're going to roll into segment 2. So the first segment was a little bit more about you and your story, but then this segment's going to be focusing more on, advice and giving back to the students. So being an alumni yourself now, what are things that student athletes need to know to make their transition more smooth?
I would just recommend putting yourself out there, trying new opportunities, even if it's, going to a seminar or a training or some type of an event. I know with COVID, it's very different right now. Not a lot of in-person things going on, but networking has definitely been my strong suit and where I seem to thrive and I feel comfortable. Cheerleading definitely helped with my presentation skills and everything. I'm not scared to be in public and do things out in front of everyone. So I like to try to push myself to try new things, but also continue to excel at what I'm good at. So yeah, that's always the question. Like, I don't want anyone to do anything that they're super uncomfortable with, but you should at least give it a try to say you have, because you never know. But if you find something you're passionate about, even work or outside of work, something to stick with, because then that sense of reward is always there, and accomplishment. Whether it's volunteering or doing something as far as joining a club. Yeah, those are definitely things I would stick with.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So the unit that I'm in now and what we do is called Maryland Made. So basically all the student athlete programs that we have that are available to the student athletes. But obviously when you were on campus, that wasn't an established unit yet. So how did you get ready for your career while being a student athlete? So did you utilize any university connections, or what did you find helpful for you?
So as far as cheerleading, we were not a sport. We did get drug tested. We did have access to tutoring, but we did not have priority scheduling. I think I did utilize the tutoring services. And I actually found my internship on my own, not through the school. I guess options were limited then. And we were barely even using cell phones. And so the technology was not there. The networking type things were not there at the student level, at least for me. So that is one thing that I regret. I wish I would have found, or maybe looked a little harder to find, but I am independent naturally. So I kind of just, let me figure this out and make it work type of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you. So focusing a little bit more now on government. So we have a lot of students who are interested in the government sector. So what specific advice would you give those students on getting started, or what you think would be, the first step to having a successful career in government?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, this week I was also doing interns for a day, and I got matched with 5 different people. So I think I've done 3 of them already. And I'm like learning about all these resources they have now, and I was like, wow, like there's a federal fellows program, like awesome. I didn't know that if maybe that existed. I don't know. I don't remember being told about it when I was there. But definitely working on making yourself well-rounded and showing you do have time management skills that is attractive for any employer, especially in the government, because we have competing priorities depending on what agency you go to work for. Things can be very time sensitive. Most agencies, especially in this region, require clearance. So definitely be mindful of your behavior and your actions, because it can come back to bite you. That's the truth. Yeah, we didn't have photos and things when I was in school growing up. So a little different now with all the different technology. I definitely recommend taking writing classes, seeking out help on improving your resume. Basically with the government, the portal for applying for all these jobs is USA Jobs. It's the Office of Personnel Management. It's how they get people into the different agencies. So I definitely recommend getting on there, exploring, seeing what types of jobs are out there, and see what attracts you to them. I have been always interested in Department of Homeland Security, so there's a lot of options there. Maybe someone is interested in just policy, but like what type of policy? Do you have a passion for healthcare? Do you have a passion for immigration? So you can do searches and queries on different keywords. You can do searches and queries on there's job titles and codes, like the 0083 is security. That's what I was most of my career. And it's very neutral, and that's a good way to get your foot in the door. There's an 0132, which is an intelligence research specialist. They have a great kind of onboarding process. You can start out lower, but work your way up. Currently, I'm a 0343, the management and program analyst, but I have to, although I can search that number, I have to look at each of these individual announcements, and you will too, to see like what are the roles and responsibilities of that job. Does that fit my personality? Like, is that something I want to work in? And you got to go for it. You got to start applying. You got to start putting your resume out there, because if you make the list and you get interviewed, that's a whole nother process. You got to work on your interviewing skills, making sure you maybe practice with somebody and do different types of questions. You know, one of the popular questions are name 2 strengths and 2 of your weaknesses. You know, it kind of puts people on the spot. And then some agencies want to know what you know about them already. So do your research, do your homework, become educated and learn about what group you want to support and work for, because the more passion you have, the more you'll care about it.
So I think a big difference in government and getting government jobs that you spoke about a little bit is the different clearances. So could you tell us a little bit more about that for maybe students who are just thinking about getting into the government sector, and how to go about that, what the different clearances are, and things like that?
Okay, so something that's important to note is that you can't just go get a clearance. So you have to. They're called billets or positions at different agencies, have a justification and require a clearance or don't. And if they do require a clearance, they'll outline the level. And say you apply for a job at Customs and Border Protection. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to need a clearance. Some of them just do a public trust background, just making sure, cross the T's, dot the I's, everything's good to go. And that's called like a suitability type review. Meaning we trust in you to have access to our sensitive information, but maybe not classified. But maybe you apply to Customs and Border Protection and you want to work in intelligence. Well, that's going to require a top secret clearance. There's also things beyond top secret that are special accesses. So you have to meet, there's 13 adjudication guidelines that they look at when you're going to obtain a clearance. They look at anything from financial foreign connections, your criminal history, and nothing's a deal breaker per se. They try to look at you as this whole person concept. So that kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, like forget the clearance. You want to be well-rounded as a person. Well, that matters too when you're going to get your clearance. You're more marketable. So they look at you, make sure they factor in anything involved. Investigators go out and interview, and if you are found suitable for that clearance, then the agency would hire you, and you would get your briefing within that first week of you coming on board at that agency. Now, once you have a clearance, that doesn't mean you just get to keep it for the rest of your life. There are requirements to maintain your clearance. There are reporting requirements along the way. Any significant life-changing events you'll have to report. Every 5 to 10 years, it all depends on your clearance level. You'll have to get another background. Let's see, I got mine first one in 2003, got one in 2009, 14, and I just had one. So, or maybe even another one. So they're a little behind sometimes. So it's not exactly 5 years, but I've had 4 or 5 done in my career already to maintain my clearance. And if I changed roles at any time, and you can be downgraded, you could, oh, this role doesn't require secret anymore, so you don't just get to carry it with you. But the whole idea regarding clearances, as long as you remain eligible, meaning none of those significant life-changing events would impact that clearance, then it's much easier for you to get it back. So say then you, within a year, you find another job, they'll see, oh, well, they had a clearance here, so great. Like we'll be able to, they call it adjudicate you to get you back to that level. So definitely following all the reporting requirements of the agency or organization that you're at, and being on your best behavior, of course. So.
So I know you spoke on a couple of different things, obviously clearances being a big one, having a clean record and things like that, but are there any other barriers that maybe government jobs would face that other industries may not, and how can you either overcome them or be more prepared for them before graduation?
I missed the first part of the question because some cars went by and they were, of course, making noise. Sorry.
No worries. So I said, what are the barriers? I know you spoke about the clearances and things like that, but are there any other barriers that government jobs face that other industries may not technically face?
Well, I would say 2 stand out to me. One, it's a different culture. You may come in and be the youngest person in the office, and there's different cliques. I mean, it's like school, it's kind of very similar, who sits at what lunch table, things like that. So that's something you'll have to get into. Not all agencies I've worked at have I had actual friends at work. Clearly I enjoy what I'm doing, so I don't overthink it, but you're not always going to have a best friend at the office. You're going to have to build that trust and figure out who you can rely on. The other thing is the government can be furloughed. I have been furloughed twice in my career. That is where it depends on the agency you work for, but it's tied to Congress and funding. And when the Congress and the president can't agree on the budget for that specific type of agency or that individual agency, like it can be general or specific, then they furlough you, meaning you can't go into work. And if you are essential, you still go in, but then they still don't pay you. I don't understand it. I don't get it. I was one time essential, and so I had to work and not get a paycheck until, ta-da, the president and Congress agree, they shake hands, they sign it, and then you get back paid, but it's not a guarantee. In 2013, this happened. I think I was out of the office for 2 or 3 weeks. Another time I was told I was essential, but then Congress passed the budget quicker, so we didn't really, that was, I think, 2015. And then 2 years ago, with President Trump and Congress, they were going back and forth, and it got a little scary for people. People, rely on those paychecks. DC area, people live paycheck to paycheck. I have a mortgage. I own this condo I'm in, and luckily I had my side hustle of teaching fitness classes. That while instead of sitting at home and not working, I was picking up classes all over the city and asking to sub and things like that. Because the scary part was we didn't know how long this was going to last. And I think it went over a month, maybe a month and a half. And then we didn't know if we were going to get back paid. We did, but it's just not a guarantee. It's kind of a pretty messed up game that I feel that Congress and the president play with the people, because it's them arguing about priorities and spending, but they're impacting, people's families and their livelihoods. So that is something to be aware of. But contractors also have it down, bad as well. Like their company could lose a contract. So say, it's been awarded at an agency for like 3 to 5 years, and that 5 years comes around and they decide to go with another vendor, another company, you'll just be moved to another group, and then you don't really have a say. So there's pluses and minuses with being federal versus contractor.
I think that's really helpful and definitely good reminders for people getting into the industry to sort of think about and figure out themselves. So
you got to weigh your pros and cons with, what you're looking for, what's a requirement and a need.
As any industry though, so it's good to know beforehand.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna roll into our last segment here, and this is focusing on really staying connected. So how can student athletes stay connected to UMD after graduation?
Well, clearly, I'm a member of Terrapin Club, Alumni Association, and the M Club. So I'm a life member for, I think, all of them, or except for Terrapin Club. So, they definitely put out a lot of communication, have a lot of events. The Alumni Association here in DC, there's another girl actually on it that cheered, Ashley. So we link up a lot. There's local locations in different towns. Like I know there's a bar here in DC that's a good place to go to watch basketball and football games. That we have the Alumni Association will host like a night at the Wizards or the Nats, maybe even possibly DC United as well. You can get, discount on tickets, sit with the group. I'm into sports, so that's always something I would seek out and try to do. For the M Club that I'm on the board for, we have our own M Club network, and we actually have a good terminal, I guess you would call it. Laura will yell at me if I use the wrong term, to find other similar athletes. It's kind of like LinkedIn for athletes. That's how I look at it. You get connected to people, you can keep up with them. You could, build new connections and network that way and seek employment. The M Club really gives back, doing the little things that the other bigger organizations don't do, such as, the sashes. We early on in COVID helped with getting laptops for students who were affected. We have great tailgate, tailgate's always fun. So hopefully next year. I just think everybody has their niche. Like sports is my thing, but like if you're into the arts, there's always events going on. I know I even get, because I used to live in Maryland at one point, I'll see like the Montgomery County Terps are doing a crab feast. Maybe they're doing like a pumpkin patch thing. There's little things like that. I just feel like with Maryland, and especially still living in this area, I alwait's run into fellow Terps and kind of have that instant bond.
No, that's really helpful. I think that it's cool to hear that you're involved in a couple of different things. So I think it does give a lot of different options. And like you said, I've known from other alumni that I've talked to that there's almost a Terrapin alumni group in almost every city, and they're all over the place. So that's definitely reassuring, to build that network and, have that connection, like you said.
Yeah.
So that is all that I have for you. I want to give you the opportunity to just kind of give one final piece of advice, one thing you wish you knew, whatever you want to end out on, and kind of let the students know from your experience.
Yeah, I recommend, being open-minded, put yourself out there, try attending, like I said, seminars, trainings. That's where you meet people. And it honestly is about making those connections. People will remember you. You'll have people you can count on. That, it's not just you on your own out there trying to do it. Other people are like you trying to do it. Don't let somebody tell you no. Try to, find a solution, get advice, ask for input, and definitely be willing to accept, constructive criticism. It's not always going to be what you want to hear, but sometimes you need to hear it, and it's just going to help you improve. And again, find something you're passionate about, go for it, do your homework. I think that's it.
Covered a lot of bases there.
Yeah. Giving you a lot.
Overall, thank you so much, Megan. I know that we covered a lot of things and you gave a lot of insight and information to really how to excel in a government job. So really appreciate that, and for you being here. I know that the student athletes will be very thankful to have this information and be able to kind of look back on. So again, just want to thank you, and I'll definitely encourage all the student athletes to join the M Club and get connected to you even more, and maybe get to some of those games and different events with you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate you being here.
Yes, of course. Bye.
Bye.